That's what our HOA president screamed as her private security guard pulled a gun on my wife. All of this happened because my wife planted some red roses and had a punching bag in our garage. Our HOA has its own security force, yes, you read. That right, and they decided my wife's morning workout was a threat to the neighborhood. That was a big mistake. You see, when fake cops with real guns try to intimidate most people, they panic. But my wife, she just got quieter. That silence should have been their first warning. The woman in yoga pants they were threatening had worn a very different kind of uniform before, and in many ways, she still does. What happened next took only 2.7 seconds and ended with real police officers saluting her. But to understand why our HOA went after us, we need to go back to day one. Our moving day was supposed to be perfect. It was a beautiful June day with sunshine and chirping birds, the complete suburban dream. My wife, Maya, stood in our new driveway, studying the house. She looked at it the way she used to study target buildings in Afghanistan, good lines of sight, she muttered, then caught herself and smiled at me. Sorry, old habits die hard. Just then, her special, secure phone buzzed. It wasn't her regular phone. She answered with the same crisp military voice that still gives me chills, even after 5 years of marriage. Recovery status. The voice on the other end asked, Green, continuing medical leave as prescribed. Maya responded, Roger that. Check in every 30 days. She hung up and saw me staring. Just protocol, she said, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. 6 months earlier, she had been hit with shrapnel in her left shoulder while pulling a diplomat's child from a burning car in Yemen. The doctor said she needed time to heal, and the army gave her medical leave. We thought this quiet neighborhood would be the perfect place for her to recover. The moving truck had just left when Maya claimed the garage as her yoga studio. She hung a 100-pound heavy bag in the corner. For therapeutic purposes, she said, with an innocent look that didn't fool anyone. She also started planting a garden on our very first day, specifically with red roses. Her therapist had said gardening helps with. Well, she didn't finish the sentence, and I knew what she meant. It was to help with the nightmares and the constant state of high alert that comes from 15 years in special operations. Those roses weren't just flowers to her. They were a promise that something beautiful could grow, even after so much violence. She planted them with the same precision she used for her missions, each bush exactly 3 feet apart, with the flower bed having military sharp edges. By the end of the first week, they were already showing new, deep red buds against our white picket fence. Everything seemed perfect until day 2, when I first met Penelope. She showed up at exactly 7 a.m., holding a measuring tape and a clipboard, looking like some kind of neighborhood spy. She was a 62-year-old woman with silver hair and a perm so stiff it looked like it could survive a hurricane. She wore a vest that said HOA President like it was a badge of honor. Her eyes were so cold you could understand why people might cross the street to avoid her. Welcome to the neighborhood, she said, but her tone made it clear we were not welcome. I'm here for the new resident inspection. Before I could even respond, she was measuring our mailbox with her tape. She then pulled out a level to check if it was perfectly straight. Your mailbox is half an inch too tall, she announced, clicking her pen and making a note. That's a violation of HOA Code 17.3b. I laughed, thinking she was joking. The look she gave me could have frozen hell. This is no laughing matter, Mr. Miller, she snapped. Standards exist for a reason. Chaos starts with small things like this. I'll need this corrected within 72 hours. She then moved on to photograph our house from every angle, stopping when she saw Maya's rose garden. Her whole attitude changed, like a predator that had caught a scent. These roses, she said, pointing with her pen as if it were a weapon. They are red no 47 on the official color chart. That color is not on the approved list. You'll need to replace them. May I suggest pink no 12 or perhaps yellow no 6. Just then, Maya stepped out, still in her workout clothes from her 5 a.m. training session. She moved with a fluid grace that only comes from years of combat training, every step balanced and purposeful. Penelope's eyes narrowed as she sized up my wife's athletic build and controlled movements. And you are? Penelope asked, her voice dripping with fake politeness. Maya Miller, my wife replied, her voice neutral but her eyes sharp. I'm the homeowner. I see, Penelope said, making another note. I trust you received our welcome packet. The one with 47 pages of community guidelines. I had tried to read it but gave up around page 15, which had detailed rules for the right size of doormats. The packet listed 47 approved paint colors, none of them interesting, grass height requirements to 2.5 inches measured weekly, and even rules for bird feeders only to specific seed types allowed. Penelope continued her inspection for another hour, measuring our grass with a ruler and taking pictures of our windows. She even checked the color of our garden hose against a color wheel she pulled from her vest. I run a tight ship here, she informed us. This community has standards and property values to maintain. Some people, she said, glancing at our house with disgust, don't appreciate what we've built here. After she left, our elderly next-door neighbor, Frank, shuffled over. Did she measure your grass, too? He asked. I nodded. Every week, he said, shaking his head, for 5 years. She's very particular about this street, especially your house. When I asked why, he just shrugged and walked away. But not before adding, the last family lasted 8 months, the ones before that, 6. Just saying, the violation notices started arriving right away. On day 3, we got a warning for excessive noise at 5 a.m., which was just Maya's workout routine, quieter than most people's alarm clocks. On day 7, a $50 fine for the unapproved rose color. On day 10, a $100 fine for having a commercial vehicle in our driveway, which was just one of Maya's yoga students' cars. Each notice was delivered with more and more aggression, and the language became more threatening. Maya handled it better than I did. I've dealt with worse in Kandahar, she'd say, filing each notice in a folder she labeled evidence, but I could see it was wearing on her. This was supposed to be her safe space, her recovery zone. Instead, she was analyzing her surroundings like she was back in a combat zone, always looking for potential threats. On day 14, the final blow came by certified mail. I signed for it with a sense of dread. The postal worker gave me a sympathetic look, as if he knew what was inside. I opened it with shaking hands while Maya watched from the doorway. The official HOA letterhead seemed to scream at me. Final notice. Your property is in violation of 17 HOA codes. You must correct all violations or sell your property within 30 days or face legal action, including forced foreclosure. Maya read the letter once, then read it again. Something in her expression shifted. It was the same focused, dangerous, and ready look I had seen in her wedding photos from when she was deployed. 30 days, she said quietly. She's giving us 30 days to abandon our home. I watched as she folded the letter with precise, military corners. Her jaw was set in a way that meant someone, somewhere, had just made a very big mistake, but why would she demand we sell our house? I wondered, if your HOA has ever threatened you with something crazy, drop a comment. I need to know I'm not alone. The community center where the HOA meeting was held smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. I wore my best suit, the one I saved for weddings and funerals, hoping to kill them with kindness. Just be reasonable, I told myself in the mirror. Explain the situation. They're human beings. Maya, however, refused to change out of her workout clothes, black tactical pants, and a fitted tank top that showed the scar on her shoulder. I'm not performing for her, she said, and I knew better than to argue. The meeting room was packed with our neighbors, most of whom looked like they would rather be anywhere else. Penelope sat at the head table like a queen holding court with 2 other board members who looked terrified of her. Behind us, her security guard, Gus, stood with his hand resting on his badge, trying to look like a tough military man with his tactical vest and cargo pants. Maya took one look at him and I saw her lips twitch with either amusement or pity. Next on the agenda, Penelope announced, skipping any pleasantries, the Miller property violations. She clicked a remote and a picture of our house appeared on a projector screen. As you can see from Exhibit, the Millers have accumulated 17 violations in just 2 weeks. This includes operating an illegal business, creating noise disturbances, and having non-compliant landscaping. The next slide showed a picture of Maya's morning workout, clearly taken with a long-range camera lens. This was recorded at 5:07 a.m., Penelope said. Note the aggressive nature of the exercises. This is not yoga, this is combat training. Murmurs went through the crowd. Some people started leaving, shaking their heads. I tried to speak up, if I could just explain. "You'll have your turn, Mr. Miller," Penelope cut me off. Though I doubt any explanation could justify this blatant disregard for our community's standards, she continued her presentation, showing photos of the roses, the mailbox, and even a picture of Maya's student's car with the license plate circled in red. "Furthermore," Penelope said, building up to her big moment, "our research shows that Mrs. Miller claims to be a yoga instructor, yet she has no business license on file." "What exactly is she hiding that got Maya's attention?" I saw her shift her weight slightly, the same way she did when assessing a threat. Richard, the treasurer, was watching Maya with a strange expression, as if he was trying to place her. "The board has already voted," Penelope continued, a cold, satisfied smile on her face. "The $500 fine stands. Furthermore, if the violations are not corrected and the property is not sold within 30 days, we will pursue legal action." She then called for a vote of approval. All in favor. 2 hands immediately went up, Penelope's and one of the terrified board members. Richard hesitated, still looking at Maya, then slowly shook his head. "Motion passes," Penelope announced, ignoring that it was only to out of 3. Meeting adjourned. The room emptied quickly as neighbors avoided making eye contact with us. I felt like I had been publicly shamed. In the parking lot, Richard nervously approached us. He was a small man, maybe in his 50s, who moved carefully, like someone used to staying under the radar. "You need to know something," he said, glancing around to make sure Penelope wasn't watching. "This isn't about the rules." He pulled out his phone and showed us an old news article. The headline read, "Local couple wins heated bidding war for dream home." The photo was of a young couple celebrating in front of our house. 5 years ago, Richard explained, Penelope bid everything she had on your house. She lost by $1,000 to the Johnsons. They lasted 6 months before she drove them out. Then the Patels, they lasted 8 months. The Washingtons made it a full year. His hands shook as he scrolled through more articles. "She calls it the house that should have been mine. She keeps detailed files on everyone who lives there." "You're telling me she's driven out 3 families?" I asked, stunned. Richard nodded. "You're number 4, and she's getting more efficient at it." He looked at Maya with a glimmer of hope. "But I saw how you stood in there, how you watched everything. You're not like the others, are you?" Maya studied the articles like she was analyzing intelligence reports. "So, she's been planning this for 5 years, perfecting her methods," she said. "She has a room in her house," Richard whispered. "I've seen it during board meetings. It has charts, timelines, photos. It's unsettling." That's when Maya smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile I'd seen in photos from her deployments, usually right before something very bad happened to very bad people. "She wants a war over a house," Maya said quietly. "She just got one." Richard looked both relieved and terrified. "Be careful," he warned. "She's connected. She knows people from her old job as a dispatcher. And Gus, her guard, is desperate to prove himself. He failed out of the military and wants to show he's tough." As we drove home, Maya was quiet, processing everything. Finally, she spoke. "Pull over at the electronics store. I need to pick up some equipment." "What kind of equipment?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The kind that helps you know your enemy," she replied. Penelope made 2 mistakes. First, she threatened our home. Second, she gave me 30 days to plan. Wait, did Richard just say Penelope drove out 3 other families? Type run if you think we should have left, or fight if you would have stayed. What would you do? On Thursday morning, I woke up to find Maya already at work. Her laptop was open, surrounded by tiny cameras and other electronic gear. "Operational awareness," she said when she saw my raised eyebrow. "First rule of warfare, know your battlefield." Through our kitchen window, I could see Gus in his backyard, attempting to do pull-ups on a doorframe bar. He managed to before dropping, red-faced and gasping. Maya watched him with a professional eye. "Former military?" she asked. "According to Richard, he failed basic training," I said. "He just wants to prove he's tough." Gus then moved on to what he probably thought were tactical movements, clearing imaginary rooms with a broomstick. His form was so bad that even I could tell he had no idea what he was doing. Maya just shook her head. "He's playing soldier. That's a dangerous combination, incompetent and eager to prove himself." She turned back to her equipment, efficiently installing microcameras at key points around our property, not inside, as she noted that would be illegal, but covering every possible angle of approach to our house. By noon, she had Penelope's entire routine mapped out. Target maintains predictable patterns, Maya reported, sounding like she was briefing a mission. Morning inspection walks at 7 a.m., returns at 2 p.m. for secondary surveillance, and does an evening patrol at 7 p.m. She had even noted which neighbors Penelope spent extra time watching. She's documenting everything, building cases against people, Maya observed, were not her only targets, just the current priority. That's when Maya decided to escalate. Time to give her something to watch, she announced. The next morning, she moved her workout outside. It wasn't the gentle yoga she had been doing for therapy. It was the real deal. The heavy bag shook the garage walls, the speed rope cracked. Like gunfire, and medicine ball slams left divots in the grass. Each day, she got a little louder, a little more intense. I watched Penelope from our window, her binoculars pressed to her face as she frantically took notes. "You're baiting her?" I said. Maya smiled. "I'm giving her what she expects to see, a dangerous, unstable veteran. Let her think she's in control," as she started playing Middle Eastern music during her workouts, loud enough to be heard, but not loud enough to violate any noise rules. She would call out commands in Arabic, the same phrases she used to train allied forces. Penelope's visits to our fence line became more frequent, her measuring tape always in hand. Gus started accompanying her, puffing out his chest with his hand near his pepper spray. One night, while reviewing the camera footage, Maya caught something there, she said, pointing at the screen. At 2 a.m., the footage showed Gus sneaking up to our fence in the darkness. He knelt by a fence post and installed something. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked. Maya zoomed in. It was a cheap listening device, the kind you could buy online for $50, amateur hour, she muttered. "This thing probably has a range of 10 feet and the battery will be dead in a day," but she didn't remove it. Instead, she started having loud, fake conversations near that corner of the yard. My unit called, she'd say clearly, "They want me back early," something about an urgent deployment. I played along, though it felt like being in a very dangerous school play. "But your medical leave isn't up yet," I'd respond. "They don't care," Maya would reply. "When duty calls, you answer." Within 2 days, Penelope had called an emergency HOA board meeting. The email she sent out was practically vibrating with excitement. Urgent security concern regarding military personnel threatening neighborhood safety. Maya read it with satisfaction. Perfect. "She's taking the bait. What's the plan?" I asked. "Sunday morning," Maya said. "She be watching. Gus will be ready. And we'll give them exactly what they expect to see." She spent all of Saturday preparing, checking her equipment and running through her movements. It reminded me of watching her prepare for missions back when I was allowed to know about them. "Just remember," she told me, "when it goes down, stay inside and film everything. Whatever happens, don't intervene." "What exactly is going to happen?" I asked. "Gus is going to make a mistake," she said simply. "And I'm going to let him." That night, she was restless, the way she always was before an operation. "You know," she said in the darkness, "I joined the military to protect people, to serve something bigger than myself. And now I'm playing games with a bitter old woman and her toy soldier. We could still leave," I offered, though I knew she'd never accept. "No," she said firmly. "Bullies don't stop when you run. They just find new targets." Penelope needs to learn that some people fight back. Sunday morning arrived, crisp and clear, perfect visibility for what was about to happen. Maya did her stretches, checked her cameras one last time, and then headed outside for what she called her most aggressive workout yet. As I watched from the window with my camera ready, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to cross a line we could never uncross. Is Gus really planting a listening device on our property? Pause now and tell me in the comments if you think this is even legal, because what happens next is absolutely insane. At 5 a.m. sharp on Sunday morning, Maya stepped into our backyard. She was wearing her most military-style workout gear, black tactical pants, combat boots, and a fitted tank top that showed every muscle she had earned in 15 years of service. She started with shadow boxing, but these weren't fitness class moves. These were kill strikes, knife hands to the throat and palm strikes to the nose, movements designed to end fights permanently. I watched from the kitchen window with my phone. Ready as lights started coming on in the neighboring houses. Maya moved to the heavy bag, her strikes echoing through the quiet morning like artillery fire. A left hook, a right cross, and a knee strike that would have folded a person in half. She wasn't holding back anymore. This was the real Maya. The one who had earned a Purple Heart and a chest full of classified medals. Across the street, I saw Penelope at her window, her binoculars practically vibrating with excitement. She was on her phone, gesturing wildly. By 5:15 a.m., Maya had moved on to knife training. She wasn't using real knives, she wasn't stupid, but training blades that whistled through the air as she performed combat drills. Slash, stab, throw. Reset, repeat. More neighbors were watching now, some with their phones out, recording. Old Frank was on his porch with a cup of coffee, watching like it was a show. That's when I heard our gate slam. Gus had arrived, dressed in his full tactical costume. His vest was covered in patches he had probably bought online, and his cargo pants were stuffed with gear. He strutted across our yard like he owned it, one hand on his pepper spray and the other near the handgun on his hip. Yes, this wannabe cop was carrying a real gun, ma'am. He shouted in what he probably thought was an authoritative voice. Cease all activities immediately. This is HOA security. Maya finished her current drill and slowly turned to face him. Her expression was completely calm, almost bored. You're trespassing on private property, she said evenly. Please leave. I have authority, Gus screamed, his face turning red. HOA security directive, you are creating a disturbance. Am I? Maya asked, tilting her head. It's 5:20 a.m. I'm exercising in my own yard. You're the one screaming. That made him furious. He stepped closer, his hand moving to his gun. Don't get smart with me. I know what you are. Penelope told me all about you, an unstable veteran, probably with PTSD. Several neighbors gasped. Frank actually stood up, looking concerned. Maya's expression didn't change, but I saw her weight shift slightly as she dropped into a ready stance. Last warning, she said quietly. Leave my property. That's when Gus made the biggest mistake of his life. He drew his gun. Get on the ground, now. He screamed, pointing the weapon at my wife with shaking hands. Hands behind your head. Do it now, or I'll shoot. Time seemed to slow down. I heard neighbors screaming and saw more phones coming up to record. Someone yelled to call the police. Gus was so focused on looking tough that he didn't notice. Maya had already moved. What happened next took exactly 2.7 seconds. I know because I watched the video about 100 times later. At 0.5 seconds, Maya shifted her weight and flowed into a space like water. At 1 second, her left hand swept the gun aside while her right hand struck his wrist with surgical precision. At 1.5 seconds, the gun went spinning away as she controlled his arm, using his own momentum against him. At 2 seconds, she swept his leg while keeping him in an arm lock, and Gus was falling. At 2.5 seconds, Maya had snatched the gun out of mid-air. At 2.7 seconds, she had the weapon completely disassembled, its pieces scattered across our lawn like broken toys. Gus hit the ground hard, gasping like a fish out of water. Maya stood over him, completely relaxed, not even breathing hard. You failed basic training, didn't you, Gus? She said conversationally. Let me guess, week 3? Couldn't handle the pressure. Gus was sobbing now, all his tactical toughness gone. How did you? Next time, pick on someone your own size, Maya said, stepping back, and Gus, I went easy on you. Be grateful. The police arrived within minutes with multiple cars, lights, and sirens. The first officer on the scene was young and completely confused by the sight of scattered gun parts, a crying security guard, and a calm woman in workout clothes. But when the police chief arrived, an older man with a military posture, everything changed. He took one look at the disassembled gun, at Maya's stance, and at the precision of the takedown, and I saw recognition in his eyes. Ma'am, he said carefully, were you defending yourself? Yes, sir, Maya replied. This individual entered my property without permission and drew his weapon on me. I responded with the minimum necessary force to neutralize the threat. The chief nodded slowly. I'll need statements from witnesses. 6 neighbors immediately volunteered their videos. The chief reviewed them on the spot, his expression growing darker with each one. Mister, he said, addressing Gus, who was still on the ground, you're under arrest for criminal trespass, brandishing a weapon, and assault with a deadly weapon as they cuffed Gus and led him away. Still blubbering about his authority, the chief approached Maya. That was textbook close quarters combat, he said quietly. Where did you serve? Still serving, Maya replied. On medical leave, he nodded with deep respect, then lowered his voice and almost whispered, Delta. Maya just smiled. The videos hit social media within hours. The hashtag HOA Guard vs Mystery Woman was trending by noon. The video got 5 million views and was still climbing. The comments were pure gold. That's military training. John Wick's daughter. This is why you don't mess with yoga teachers. My favorite was, did my wife just disarm an armed security guard in 2.7 seconds? And why is the police chief saluting her? If you're still watching, you need to comment where you're from because this video is blowing up worldwide and I'm still in shock. Asterisk, we had 2 weeks of peace. 2 weeks of neighbors treating Maya like a celebrity and 2 weeks of Penelope hiding in her house. The video had exploded beyond anything we could have imagined, hitting 20 million views. News outlets were picking it up and retired military experts were breaking down Maya's technique frame by frame. Former Navy SEAL here, one comment read, that's not just military training. That's top-tier special operations. This woman is the real deal. Gus had completely disappeared, too embarrassed to show his face after crying on camera. Word was he had moved back in with his mother to towns over. I thought maybe we had one. Maybe Penelope would back off, find a new hobby, and leave us alone. I should have known better. People who live for revenge don't just give up. They get creative. A letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by certified mail, which required a signature. It was on official Department of Defense letterhead, with enough seals and stamps to make my hands shake as I signed for it. Maya was in the garage working the heavy bag when I brought it to her. She took one look at my face and stopped mid-strike. What is it? I handed it to her wordlessly. She read it once, quickly, then again, slowly. I watched the color drain from her face. Service member complaint, she read aloud. Conduct unbecoming. Investigation pending. Her voice trailed off as she reached the worst part. Security clearance suspended, pending full review. The letter was full of accusations of unstable behavior and an unprovoked assault on civilian security personnel. It claimed her conduct reflected poorly on the United States Armed Forces. Attached was a USB drive with video evidence. Penelope's edited version, showing only Maya's takedown and conveniently leaving out the part where Gus drew his weapon. She filed a federal complaint, Maya said, sounding stunned. That crazy old woman. How does she even know how to do this? I asked Dodd. Maya was already pulling up the complaint on her laptop. As she read, her expression darkened. This is professionally written. She knew exactly what language to use, which forms to file, and which departments to copy. Then she found a note in Penelope's complaint that referenced an incident from her last deployment. How does she know about Yemen? Maya whispered. That's classified information. She stood up abruptly and started pacing like a caged animal. Without clearance, I can't deploy. I can't access my unit. I can't do my job. She grabbed her phone and dialed a number with shaking fingers. Sir, this is Master Sergeant Miller. I'm being framed by a civilian. Yes, sir, I saw the letter. But, sir, if you just review the full video, I understand. Yes, sir. Protocol. She threw the phone against the wall. It was the first time I had ever seen her completely lose control. 15 years, she shouted. 15 years of service, 8 deployments, 3 bronze stars, a Purple Heart. She punched the heavy bag so hard it swung up and hit the ceiling. I took shrapnel saving a diplomat's kid, and this is how they treat me. Then the tears came. My warrior wife, who had faced down terrorists and warlords, was crying in our garage because a bitter old woman with a grudge had found the one way to truly hurt her. Without my clearance, I'm nobody, she sobbed. Just another broken vet with anger issues. Everything I've worked for, everything I am. I held her as she broke down, feeling helpless and furious. Maya had survived IEDs and ambushes. She had medals she couldn't even tell me about. And now, she was being destroyed by HOA paperwork. We'll fight this, I promised. We'll get lawyers. We'll file appeals. I made 3 calls that night. The first was to Richard, who answered on the second ring as if he'd been waiting. The second was to a lawyer friend from college who specialized in federal cases. The third was to someone Penelope had wronged years ago. "Mr. Williams," I said when he answered, "you bid on a house 5 years ago and lost to a young couple by $1,000. I think it's time we talked about the woman who has been stalking everyone who has lived in that house since." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I've been waiting 5 years for this call. What do you need by morning?" I had a plan. Penelope thought she had won by attacking Maya's career. She had no idea she had just united every person she had ever wronged. The HOA president was about to learn what happens when you go after a soldier's family. The next few days were a blur of secret meetings and gathering documents. Richard smuggled out financial records from board meetings, taking pictures of everything with shaking hands. The Williams family had kept detailed records of Penelope's harassment, including dates, times, and witnesses. My lawyer friend was practically drooling over the case. Interstate fraud, false federal reports, embezzlement. He was building a list of serious charges. Meanwhile, Maya tried to keep up some sense of normalcy, but I could see she was dying inside. She would wake up at 5 a.m. out of pure muscle memory, only to remember she had nowhere to report. She would start to check her secure phone, then remember her clearance was suspended. The worst part was the waiting. Military investigations move at their own slow pace, and every day of silence was another nail in her career's coffin. 20 years from now, she said one night, staring at her uniforms in the closet, "What will I tell our kids? That mommy was Delta Force until a crazy HOA lady ended her career with paperwork." That's when I knew we had to win this, not just for us, but for everyone Penelope had ever hurt. That woman had turned HOA rules into weapons, destroying lives just because she couldn't get the house she wanted. It was time for it to end. How? Did a crazy HOA president get my active duty military wife suspended? Comment rage if you're as angry as I was, because what I did next changed everything. The monthly HOA meeting was held in the same community center room where Penelope had first humiliated us. This time, I walked in alone. I made sure my shoulders were slumped with defeat written all over my body. At least, that's what I wanted them to see. Penelope sat at the head table like a queen, surveying her kingdom. She was practically glowing with satisfaction when she saw me enter without Maya. Her smile widened. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "How nice of you to join us. And where is your wife?" She said the word wife like it tasted bad. "Home," I said quietly. "Packing." Gasps rippled through the room. Penelope tried to look surprised, but I caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. "Packing? Whatever for?" "You know why," I said, letting my voice crack just a little. "She's been suspended. Her career is probably over. We can't afford the fines and a legal battle, and we can't fight a foreclosure." I looked up at her with what I hoped was a look of broken desperation. "You win. Just give us 60 days to sell, please. The market is tough right now, and with everything that's happened." I let the sentence trail off, watching her savor her victory. "Well," she said, drawing it out, "I suppose that's reasonable." She then addressed the room like she was giving a sermon. "You see, everyone, I'm not unreasonable. I simply maintain our standards. When people cooperate, I'm quite flexible." The other board members nodded quickly, eager to agree with whatever kept Penelope happy. But Richard was watching me carefully, and I saw him catch something, maybe the way my eyes flicked to the window where Maya was standing with 3 other people, or how my hands weren't shaking the way they should have been. "Since the Millers are being reasonable," Penelope continued, building to her grand moment, "I move to grant them 60 days to sell, as long as all violations are removed." "Seconded," squeaked the terrified board member beside her. "All in favor." 2 hands shot up. Richard kept his down, but it didn't matter. "Motion carries," Penelope announced. "Oh, and everyone should mark their calendars. Our next meeting will be special. We'll be celebrating the successful resolution of the security threat to our community." Actually, I was the one who got promoted. It turns out that when you file false federal reports against special operations personnel, it triggers a full investigation. They reviewed my wife's entire service record, every mission, every commendation, and every time she chose not to use deadly force when she could have. Her commander called it exceptional restraint under civilian provocation. That note is going in her file right next to her Purple Heart. She looked directly at me. No offense, Mr. Miller, but your wife's violent tendencies are simply not compatible with our peaceful neighborhood. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Of course, I managed. We understand. Behind the scenes, the real meeting was happening. In the parking lot, while I had been acting for Penelope, Maya and our allies had been busy. Richard had secretly photographed Penelope's financial records during board meetings, documenting $47,000 in stolen funds over 5 years' money for landscaping that went to her personal garden and security upgrades that only happened at her house. The Williams family had contacted every person Penelope had driven from the neighborhood. We had 3 families ready to testify about harassment and false complaints. Our lawyer had prepared federal charges for filing false reports against active military personnel. The IRS had been notified about her unreported income, and the FBI was very interested in the interstate fraud charges since her victims had moved across state lines, but Penelope knew none of this. She was too busy planning her victory party, convinced she had finally won her 5-year war over our house. As the meeting ended, her phone started buzzing. 1 notification, then 5, then a steady stream. She glanced at it, frowned, and turned it off. Then more buzzing came from the other board members' phones. Richard couldn't hide his smile as notifications kept popping up. Something was happening, and Penelope's triumphant look was starting to crack. Technical difficulties, she announced, but her voice had lost its confidence. Probably just spam calls. As I left, I made sure to shuffle slowly, playing the part of the broken man until the very end. Behind me, I heard Penelope's phone ringing nonstop. I saw her face grow paler with each glance at her screen. In the parking lot, Richard caught up to me. "Did you see her face?" he whispered. As her phone kept going off, "The beginning of the end," I said. "How many people signed on?" 14 families in total, he said, plus documentation going back 5 years. "We have everything." I smiled for the first time in weeks. She has no idea what's coming. Back home, Maya was sitting with the Williams family and 2 others. Laptops were open and documents were spread across our dining table. "How did it go?" she asked. "Oscar-worthy," I said. "She bought every second of it." "Good," Mr. Williams said. He was an older man with the patient air of someone who had waited a long time for justice, because in 3 days, at her victory meeting, she's going to get the surprise of her life. Maya looked better than she had in days. She was still suspended and still hurt, but she was no longer helpless. "You know the best part," she said. "She thinks she knows everything about investigations because of her dispatcher days, but she only knows one side of it." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She knows how to file complaints." Maya smiled coldly. "She has no idea what happens when multiple agencies receive coordinated reports about the same person on the same day. The cross-referencing alone will trigger an automatic escalation. The next 3 days were torture for Penelope, but not for us." She strutted around the neighborhood like a peacock, telling everyone about her victory. She even stopped by our house to check on the packing progress, her smile so smug I wanted to scream. Maya played along, moving boxes around and looking defeated. But every night, more families joined our cause. The Patels flew in from Atlanta, and the Washingtons drove 6 hours from their new home. Each one brought more evidence. By the time the celebration meeting arrived, we had enough evidence to bury Penelope 10 times over. "You know," Maya said as we prepared for the final showdown in Delta, "we have a saying, the enemy only thinks they've won when you let them. That's when they're most vulnerable." I looked at my wife and saw the warrior resurfacing from beneath the pain. "So this is a tactical retreat?" I asked. "No," she said, with steel in her voice. "This is an ambush." And Penelope just walked right into the kill zone. Why is Penelope's phone getting 50 notifications a minute, and why is she turning pale? Comment your prediction now, but I promise you're only half right. The community center was decorated like a victory party. Penelope had even hung a banner that read, "Celebrating Safe Neighborhoods." She had a speech prepared, printed programs, and had even brought a cake. The woman was literally throwing a party to celebrate driving us out. She stood at the podium, basking in the attention of her captive audience. "Thank you all for coming to this special meeting," she began, her voice full of self-importance. As you know, we recently faced a challenge to our community's safety and values. Some people think they're above the rules because of their backgrounds. She paused, looking around the room. But I'm here to tell you that standards apply to everyone. No exceptions. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Most were only there because Penelope would make their lives a living hell if they didn't show up. Through decisive action and proper channels, Penelope continued, we've eliminated the dangerous element from our midst, the Miller. Property will soon be available to a more suitable family. This is what happens when a community stands together against those who threaten our way of life. That's when the door opened. In walked Mr. Williams, followed by the Johnsons, the Patels, and the Washingtons, every family Penelope had driven from the neighborhood over the past 5 years. Behind them was a man in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase. Then Maya and I entered. The room went dead silent. Penelope's face went from confusion to anger and then to the first hints of fear. This is a private meeting, she sputtered. You need to leave immediately. The lawyer stepped forward. Actually, Mrs. Carson, this is perfect. We need witnesses for what's about to happen. He opened his briefcase with a dramatic flair. My name is David Smith from Morrison and Associates. I represent these 14 families in a class action lawsuit against you personally and the HOA board for systematic harassment, fraud, and embezzlement. Penelope went white. That's ridiculous. I've done nothing but protect this community. Really? Mr. Williams stepped forward. 5 years ago, you began stalking anyone who lived in that house. You filed false complaints with my employer and called my wife's workplace, claiming she was mentally unstable. You even reported us to Child Protective Services with fake concerns. The Johnsons spoke next. You had our cars towed from our own driveway and filed false police reports. You sent health inspectors to our home based on lies. You told my employer I was a terrorist, Mr. Patel added quietly, because of my skin color and the house I lived in. I lost my job. The lawyer pulled out a stack of documents. We have records of $47,000 in stolen HOA funds traced directly to your personal accounts. That's federal fraud. We have 16 false complaints you filed with various agencies. That's criminal harassment. We have proof you accessed private information from your old dispatcher job to research residents. That's a breach of privacy and misuse of government databases. The door opened again. This time, a woman in a dark suit entered, her FBI badge visible. Mrs. Penelope Carson, she said. I'm Agent Sarah Martinez, FBI. You're under arrest for filing false federal reports against active military personnel, interstate fraud, and conspiracy to commit harassment. Penelope's scream could have been heard 3 blocks away. She's Delta Force. She attacked my security. She's dangerous. Agent Martinez remained calm. We've reviewed all the video evidence, both the edited version you submitted and the full recordings from multiple witnesses. Master Sergeant Miller acted in clear self-defense against an armed intruder on her property. She nodded to Maya respectfully. Your suspension has been lifted, Sergeant. The Department of Defense sends their apologies for the inconvenience. That's when Maya stepped forward, pulling out her military ID. Master Sergeant Maya Miller. Delta Force, still active duty and still cleared for service. She looked directly at Penelope. My security clearance was reinstated yesterday when they realized you'd filed fraudulent complaints. Turns out the military doesn't appreciate civilians trying to weaponize their systems against their soldiers. Penelope was hyperventilating now, but Maya wasn't done. Oh, and Penelope, she said, pausing for effect. About those red roses that started all this, the ones you said were the wrong shade. Are they illegal now? The room erupted, not in anger but in laughter. It was a moment of perfect justice. Even some of the board members were clapping. Gus, who had been hiding in the back corner, started to slow clap, then gave Maya a thumbs up before slinking out as Agent Martinez led Penelope away in handcuffs. She was still screaming about property values and color codes. The IRS agent who had been waiting outside stepped in to inform her about the audit. Our lawyer then announced the settlement, $500,000 to be split among the victims, paid from Penelope's personal assets, including the sale of her house. But the best part, Richard said, grinning wider than I'd ever seen him, is that the HOA board voted this morning to dissolve the entire organization. We're switching to a voluntary neighborhood watch. No more fines, no more measurement requirements, and no more approved color lists. A video of Penelope's arrest, titled Delta Force Hero Defends Home from Crazy HOA, hit 25 million views in 48 hours. The comment section was pure gold. This is better than Netflix. And justice served ice cold, my favorite. Was that Rose line at the end was a chef's kiss. The FBI agent even asked Maya for a selfie after booking Penelope, admitting she'd been a fan since the first video went viral. It turns out a lot of federal agents have their own HOA. Horror stories. A week later, we received a formal letter from the Department of Defense. Not only was Maya fully reinstated, but she was also being considered for a commendation for her exemplary conduct under civilian harassment. Her commander called her personally to apologize. Miller: "I'm sorry we didn't have your back. Initially," he said, "protocol is protocol, but we should have known better. Someone like you doesn't just snap without a good reason." The neighborhood transformed overnight. Without Penelope's reign of terror, people actually started talking to each other. Gardens bloomed with whatever colors people wanted, mailboxes stood at whatever height made sense, and kids played in their yards without fear of getting a violation notice. Our red roses became a local symbol of solidarity. You know the ironic part, Maya said one evening as she watered her therapeutic garden. "Those roses really did help with my recovery. Just not in the way the therapist intended. They gave me something to fight for." 3 months later, at Penelope's sentencing, she tried one last trick, claiming mental distress from losing the house auction. The judge wasn't buying it. "Mrs. Carson, you systematically terrorized multiple families for half a decade. You weaponized bureaucracy, filed false federal reports, and stole money." 3 years in federal prison as they led her away. She was still muttering about property values. Some obsessions die hard. Others, thankfully, die in federal prison. Did we just send an HOA president to federal prison? And why is the FBI agent asking for Maya's autograph? If you're still here, you're a legend. Comment justice if this ending gave you chills, and subscribe because Penelope's prison letters are wild. Ending asterisk. So, yeah, that's what happened. Penelope got 3 years of federal time, the HOA was dissolved, and Richard now runs a much more relaxed neighborhood watch. Gus actually apologized and asked Maya for training tips. She said no. Maya is back on active duty, though. She can't tell me where. I just know it involves a lot of sand. Our roses are still red, still technically illegal by the old rules, and still beautiful. The moral of the story: don't mess with people's homes, and definitely don't pull a gun on someone who is literally trained to disarm you. Peace out, and stay away from crazy HOAs. If this story made you feel better about your own life choices, our job is done. Give it a like and check out the next story.